course of production housing is, you build to a grid, and then the front of the house faces the street it's on, and the house location's got nothing to do with the orientation of the house. So that's a concept that's free. It doesn't cost a home buyer anything as the orientation of the house.
Some of the houses also use skylights to make the best use of daylighting.
The University of Maryland also used a skylight on the north side that goes all the way across the building. It's translucent, so it's again providing on the north side just completely reflected, balanced light throughout the entire space. On the south side of the building, the University of Maryland has installed louvered doors, allowing ventilation to flow through the doors, but they still shade the southern glass.
After speeches and the ribbon cutting, the houses are open to the public, where they can get a glimpse of how the spaces look, feel, and function. One common design challenge is integrating the PV, or photovoltaic panels, into the design in a graceful way. Each panel is made up of several layers, and it takes a lot of panels linked together to power even a small house.
A photovoltaic panel works by the interaction of the solar energy, the photons from the sun, as they impact the material in the photocell. That basically frees up electrons, which are then available for collection and use as electricity in the home. Basically, the photocell produces the electrons, then you harvest them through the collector system, and then you run that through, after some conditioning, into your home for use as electrical energy.
Students need to find just the right support system for the PVs.
The support system for the PV system is something that I worked on with a couple of other students, and we really worked hard on making it something that's adaptable. It's kind of like a second skin to the building.
Germany used solar panels on their roof, where they couldn't have been seen from the ground level, and blended additional panels into window shading. The energy captured by the solar cells must be stored so that the homes can tap into it to run their systems. One school chose to push the energy-generating capabilities of solar cells to the limit.
MIT made the bold move of adding approximately 1 kilowatt over other solar systems that are used on the mall here. And their concept is that they're generating more power than they're going to use.
So really, what we want to do is provide power to the power grid. So we opted to make this house not just a house, but a distributed power generator, able to always feed energy into the grid.
For climate control, all the houses have evacuated tubes which act like giant thermoses, capturing 90% of the sun's radiation. These tubes heat water, which then warms the homes using underfloor radiant systems. There are other ingenious applications on display. Lawrence Tech used a high-tech material on their exterior doors, an electromatic glass that responds to a connected PV panel.
So there's a solar panel mounted above the two doors where it's applied, and as soon as the sun hits these solar panels, the glass tints. It takes about 15 minutes to get to about a 97% tint.
The glass allows reflected light to enter the space on cloudy days, but blocks out direct sun and heat. MIT took an imaginative approach to some of their windows. A double-pane version filled with a substance called aerogel, otherwise known as frozen smoke. It lets in light without letting out any heat.
We've got a window in this building that's evacuated and packed full of aerogel. And so in that window, we've got a very, very good resistance to heat flux across the space. So it's a nice translucent, diffuse glow that comes into the bedroom. And it also has an R value of 8 for 2 panes of glass.
MIT tapped the power of the sun in another way.
MIT has one window on the south side of their building that is what's called a trom wall. And what a trom wall is essentially a thermal mass wall that can absorb and retain and store the heat energy from the sun.
But that window, or that wall, actually takes sunlight and converts it into heat that is rejected into the space, while not allowing the heat to reject out of the space.
All of these approaches demonstrate the importance of innovative design.
A home that is well designed doesn't really have any difference between one with solar and one without. Use of mechanical systems, duct placement, where you're bringing the things into a common core, a utility core, allows you to minimize the runs of ducts, which allows you to minimize the waste that you get from them. It also costs less to install and costs less to maintain. So a well-designed home remains a well-designed home regardless of whether you have solar on the house or not. And working with the designers, you can maximize that value.
The houses are designed not only to generate enough power to run all the systems and appliances, but also charge up an electric car. The teams see how many total amounts of miles they can rack up.
You know, it only goes 25 miles per hour, but it's pretty good for the city. We accidentally took it down on the freeway one day. That wasn't too good. And parallel parking, I mean, it's amazing. You know, you can get 3 cars in where one regular car is. So.
All of the teams feature a mix of architecture and engineering students. 2 groups with their own agendas.
The biggest challenge so far on this project has been working together. In the field, as you probably know, architects and engineers are at odds with each other constantly. From the very first time we started even thinking about what this house would look like and how it would act, we had architects and engineers in the same room drawing on the same piece of paper.
So the engineers would come and say, this is the right way to do things. The architects would come in and say, this is the beautiful way to do things. And we just try and meet in the middle.
Architecture students and engineering students are notorious for not getting along. And when we first started meeting as a group, it was a little bit difficult. You had to adjust to how the engineers communicate and how the architects communicate. But now it's been 2 years, we've formed a pretty close bond, we all get along really well, and we're comfortable with each other. And I think that's going to help us eventually when we go into our own careers to know where the other side is coming from.
The biggest thing that I've learned as an engineer is how to work with the other professions. I am an architectural engineer, so we are trained to work with architects and understand sort of that design language. But then when you actually sit down and you put it into practice, you know, with engineering systems, and you say we want to integrate the engineering so that it is also sort of a design component, an aesthetic component, so that people see how their house operates. They see sort of the living, breathing guts of the house, as it were, and it's not something that detracts from the house.
Working together paid off with some ingenious innovations. Maryland created a liquid desiccant waterfall, an eye-catching feature which also reduces humidity in the house, making cooling easier.
This region, the Chesapeake Bay watershed, the Mid-Atlantic region, has we have an enormous amount of humidity in various seasons of the year. And the liquid desiccant waterfall, essentially, the way I like to think about it is it's a big liquid salt lick. It's a salt solution, calcium chloride, which draws moisture from the air. And so it sounds counterintuitive that it's waterfall that's drawing out the air, but that's in fact what it does.
A desiccant is a substance that draws water to it. You often see like a little tiny gel pack that says do not eat when you buy something. And what that's doing is it's keeping inside the packaging, it's keeping the humidity level down because all of the water that's in the air in that packaging is absorbed into the desiccant. So you can use the same strategy on a larger scale inside a building.
Maryland's house is built with a feature for making use of water outside as well. Every drop of available rainwater is captured and collected.
You can see that on the roof there are gutters and downspouts that are collecting the water off of the roof surface and collecting them underneath the porch in a large cisterns. What that allows them to do is then use that rainwater for things like flushing toilets or irrigation of a garden or other things that you might use non-potable water for.
This non-potable water, or gray water, is used by Maryland to irrigate their vertical garden.
One of the reasons I like the green wall so much is that it really represents very clearly our ideas about the house. It's not just a house that